Wisconsin became part of the Union on May 29, 1848. America's Dairyland, home of Culver's, Leinenkugel, Summerfest, and the Green Bay Packers. Birthplace of Gene Wilder, Liberace, Frank Lloyd Wright, Georgia O'Keeffe, Chris Farley, Ed Gein, Jeffrey Dahmer. UFO sightings happen on a daily basis. It has more haunted locations than it does bars. The devil himself created a playground tucked into its forests. For these reasons, and many others, America's Dairyland is also America's Scary Land.
Welcome to another great probing of America's Scary Land. We're going to shake things up a little bit this week, trying something different.
Yeah.
So while we're still going to call this a probing, this is an episode, probing, where it's a lot more research-based. We didn't actually go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot more theory-based, too.
Yeah, theory-based, exactly. The episode in today's probing, I'm waking up. Sorry, it's good.
So this probing is on the missing 411.
Yes.
It's kind of it's been around for a while, but it's recently sort of picked up steam. There's a couple documentaries about it. There's a guy that wrote 8 books on it, and it's just a focus on a large group of people that have gone missing in national parks throughout the country, some of which are here in Wisconsin, kind of up by the Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. So they're missing up by the Great Lakes, and that's just, I think today we're going to kind of focus on a large portion, like the overall story behind it.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into...
We're in discussion of possibly bringing, maybe going into detail and looking at, taking a probing per season and maybe dedicating it to a missing person, or I don't know. We're still kind of in the works, so that'll be coming up in future seasons. We're not really sure exactly what.
Yeah, and this one is, like I said, it's a lot more theory-based, but it's also one of those things where, like, there's been, like I said, 2 documentaries, 8 books. There's a lot of podcasts that cover this topic in, like, super detail, and they've done it much better than I think you and I are going to be able to do.
Yeah, we're barely even going to scrape the tip of the iceberg with this. This is more of just an informative.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into like super detail or all of the facts. It's more of just I'm gonna lay down some of the stories that I read up on and kind of let's talk theory about like kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
But as usual,
yes. Before we get into the meat and taters of this probing, let's do some house cleaning.
Well, I figure we would just jump right into what would booze do.
That's what I'm saying.
We start every episode with that. So we're gonna play the theme.
Hit that theme song, Frank.
Good job, Frank. I guess. So this one is one of your marry, fuck, kill ones. So this one is marry, fuck, kill Spike from Gremlins.
Okay.
Furby or Gizmo.
Okay. Well, right off the bat, I'm gonna marry Gizmo because he's super cute. I mean, he comes with a set of rules, which is fine. I can adhere to those rules.
It's like a real marriage.
Well, let's see here.
I feel like there's only one right answer to this, but let's see what you say.
I think I'm in line with everyone else when I say kill the Furby.
Yes.
They're absolutely evil.
You are correct.
Evil things. And then that leaves the last choice for Spike. No comment there, really. That's just kind of
You're going to fuck that scaly bastard.
This is why I say. That's why I put it. That's why I call it Kiss on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with what he just.
Either way, it's going to be
dealt.
Weird.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, there's no getting around. It's going to be weird.
It's a good thing you didn't choose to fuck the children's toy though, because that would be a little weird. And
that's weird.
Furby's just ugly.
Have you ever seen them with their, just their mechanical bits?
I've never seen a naked Furby. No.
You should look it up. It's really. If you think a normal Furby is creepy looking, try looking at one with all of its Skin off.
I don't need the nightmare fuel right now. So
Yeah, you had enough of that last night.
yeah, that wasn't fun. So but yeah, so that was fun.
So that's that.
I agree with you in full with all of
That
this.
was the one answer that you knew.
That's the one answer.
Yeah.
That's really it. That
Pretty sure that's most people's
in most questions
one
of
answers.
in most questions of opinion, there's no wrong answer, but there was definitely a wrong answer in this case. So I guess now let's just get in the episode.
Because you're not gonna fuck Spike because you want to.
Yeah,
It's process of elimination. You're gonna marry Gizmo.
Yeah.
Kill the Furby, and then that leaves the last option. So.
Yeah, like it's gonna be forced upon you either way. So
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, moving into missing 411 and
411.
411.
So 3 numbers.
It is. It's only 3 numbers, and I keep messing it up.
So this one's kind of interesting because, like, Nick, you don't usually do all of the research going into our probing.
Don't sugarcoat that. I don't do
You
any
don't do any
research.
research. But
And I tried though. I tried on this, and
but this one in particular, though, I think it's good going in blind
Okay.
because I'm gonna lay out sort of the like overarching theory and like here's what's going on, and then we can get into what you and I actually kind of think could be going on.
okay.
So this whole thing started with this guy's former police officer. He did some books on Bigfoot, which is apparently like an area of like people use that against him to be like, you don't know what you're talking about because you researched
To try to
Bigfoot.
discredit him.
Yeah, which is dumb in my opinion. Like whatever.
He's real. Bigfoot's real.
But his name is David Politis. And he ended up writing a bunch of books on this topic of the missing 411. And basically from the way it started was he had...
Real quick clarification, because this is partly what happened to me when I tried to research this.
Yes.
As we get into this, Jake has already explained there's a large number of reportedly missing cases with no information. And me being the dummy that I am, I kept thinking for whatever reason there was 411 specific cases that were of very, very high interest, which is not the case whatsoever.
No.
It is just the simple abbreviation for information is 411.
That's why it's not 411.
Yeah.
It's 411.
And that screwed me up when I was trying to do research on this. The little bit of effort I put into it, and then hit my dead end roadblocks. So
Yeah.
just to clarify out there, because I fell victim to that trap, and it's probably very easy to.
There's thousands of missing people that go missing in this. The main reason this is a focus is because it's all happening in national parks.
Right.
And there's thousands upon thousands of missing cases,
All over the U.S.
all over.
Yep. Not just here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and the story with this is that there's what he's found so far is roughly 2,000 specific cases where it's not a clear case of like animal attack or wandering off and dying of exposure or like suicide or choosing to just run away. These are 2,000 specific cases of either the people are never found or they're found dead under very strange circumstances or they're found alive. And usually when they're found alive, in the few cases that they have like either really strange memories or zero memory of what happened. Yeah, so he got this sort of back in, I want to say the 90s or like the late 80s, maybe even the 70s.
I mean, in general terms, it's picked up a lot of speed
Lately.
as of recent, being the last like 20 years or so.
Yeah, and more specifically the last couple years because he's come out with 2 documentaries that are on Amazon.
And in the last couple of years, it's really taken off.
Yeah. So the way it started was, like I said, he's a former police officer, and he had garnered some notoriety from his books on Bigfoot. And so 2 of his friends or colleagues from like the National Park Service got a hold of him, and were like, "Hey, we got some weird cases. Do you want to check these out? Because we've been cross-examining our information together, and it's kind of weird." So we looked into it and started to notice, yeah, there's some weird things in these few cases that he looked into, and led him basically to asking the National Park Service for a list of like, can I just missing people? I just want to look into some of these. And
No, he asked the National Park Services for that list.
yes, and he used the Freedom of Information Act to get this. And the first response he got was they asked him why he wanted it, which A, they're not really supposed to do, and B, even if they do ask, they're not allowed to disqualify your request
Yeah, just because.
based on why you want it. He told them, "Oh, I just want it for research," and then they frankly, they just answered him with, "We don't have a list like that." And he goes, "Well, that's weird." So then he used a clause in the Freedom of Information Act where if you're a published author, you can basically like bypass it.
And you would think, though, even before being a published author, you would think like was he just a regular like beat cop, or was he like a chief police?
He was a detective.
Okay, so I mean, right there alone.
Well, he wasn't at the time though.
No, he wasn't at the time, but still, you would think that would hold some sort of clout in like, hey, I would like some information. I used to be a detective. I'm just interested in this stuff. That he wouldn't have to go as far as using the loophole in the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
That's just...
Well, and it gets weirder with that because, like, there's a thing in there that says if you're a published author, you get the information. And they came back with him, well, we researched you. You don't have enough of your books in libraries to qualify for this, which for anyone out there who doesn't know, that's not a qualifier. Doesn't matter how many libraries you're in. And he told them that. He's like, that's not a thing. And they're like, it's company policy. It's our policy that you're not in enough libraries to qualify. So they've basically told him, we don't have this list.
Yeah, they've roadblocked him.
Well, it's just weird because they're like, we don't have the list. You can't have it, but we don't have a list.
We don't have a list. You can't have a list we don't have.
Yep. And so basically then he comes back to him and he's like, well, how much would it cost me to pay you to make this list? And they told him, well, for one park...
How much palm grease?
It was for Yosemite National Park. They're like $34,000. And for a nationwide list, $1.4 million. And their reasoning behind it was they would have to pay somebody $65 an hour to gather this information, put it in a list, and give it
to create the list that they don't have.
Yes, exactly. So it's just a whole bunch of bullshit. They're really super shady. They've always been super shady about it.
And this was the National Park Service.
National Park Service. And see, the weird thing with a lot of these cases, and sort of the first qualifier for it, is somebody goes missing in a park. And in most cases, it's like a kid. Or the spectrum ranges because there's people that are like doctors, some physicists, down to...
No one's immune.
But then there's also people with autism and Down syndrome. But it's always like an extreme. It's either a kid or someone with some sort of mental health issue.
Okay. Or it's someone who has
or a learning disability. Or it's somebody that's extremely smart.
Someone's got like they're well known in some sort of field.
Not even well known, just extremely smart.
Right. Or, yeah, gifted in some sort
Hunters go missing a lot. People that you would think have common sense enough to not go missing.
Hunters, maybe someone really good at tracking.
Yep. People that shouldn't just up and disappear.
Yeah, like professional outdoors.
Yeah, like that's a big qualifier. Is like there's a bunch of people who are professional. They go hunting professionally. They fish professionally. They're out in the woods.
I don't want to derail here for a second, but I don't like that you're using qualifier as... I mean, he's qualified to be snatched out of a national park.
I mean...
I feel like that the criteria fit.
You and I are qualified to be snatched out of a national park.
We're qualified to be snatched out of your fucking apartment, right?
We have no business being outside. So it's very strange. And usually the way it goes is someone gets reported missing. Mm-hmm. There's about 7 days of searching. And then not a slow die-off. They just go, well, we're never going to find them. And they're done. And they stop looking. And the National Park Service apparently just then goes, don't know what you're talking about. So he's bringing some...
They just straight up like...
They just deny
this
it.
Emoji?
Pretty much. They just...
Shoulder raised, arm, hands up emoji?
They just shrug. And then later if you come back and go, so this missing person, they go, people don't go missing. That's nuts. But it's also weird because it's not just the National Park Service. They've had cases where the FBI comes in. They had one case, which was very strange, where... Marines and Green Berets were brought in to search for a civilian, and then later on, a very high up military leader kind of did like a little press release where he's like, it's very weird that we would send not only Green Berets to search for a civilian, but armed Green Berets to search for the civilian. We don't send military to search for civilians usually, and if we do
you know what the significance of that specific civilian in that instance was?
That's the thing. There, from all the public records, nothing. It was just a dude. And that the guy was like, it's really weird that we would send military presence out there and armed military presence, which has led people to think that there's something out there that the government knows about. So they're like, if we're going to go out there, they have to have guns if something dangerous out there. So it's a very weird thing, and it's one of those things where if it was nothing, if it was just people disappear, stuff happens.
It was just random people going missing.
Why wouldn't the National Park Service or
Yeah,
the
why
federal
would they
government
trying
be
to just
like,
railroad, just
if there's
go?
nothing to hide, why be shady? So I'm gonna give you I'm just gonna go over some cliff notes of some of the the main focused cases, because there's, like I said, 2,000, but there's only a handful that people really kind of
That they keep
focus hard on, because
Yeah.
they're very strange. Not going to go into a huge amount of detail because I don't really want to give out names. If you want to know all the names and stuff, it's easy to find. And then I figure we can kind
You
of
just
talk
have to
about
pay $1.3 million for that information,
yeah, or $20 and you buy a book.
or pay some dude to look it up and make a list for you.
Yeah. So one of the most early ones that's kind of standing out is there was a boy that went missing, and I think he was three or four, right around that toddler age. And
Now, was this one in a national park?
yes,
Do you know
it was.
which national
I want
park?
to say it was Yosemite.
Okay.
Most of these take place in Yosemite National Park. And he went missing, and in typical missing 411 cases, it was an instance of the parents were right there. They look away for about a second. They look back. Oh, my kid's gone.
Oh, straight up Joe Dirt.
Yeah.
Parents were looking at the Grand Canyon.
We turned around and they were gone.
We turned around and you were gone, Joe.
Yep. So they searched for him. They found him alive 19 hours later, and he was 8 miles away. And
That kid was hoofing it.
yeah. And the weird thing, it gets weirder, because they asked him well, what happened? Where'd you go? What? And he said that he was following a woman who looked like his grandmother, and she took him to. It's either described as a basement or just an underground tunnel that was dusty, and there were other people there, but they weren't moving. And then he realized that the people were robots. And then he realized that the woman he was following wasn't his grandma, and she was a robot because she had weird lights coming out of her head. And then she put out a piece of paper and tried to get him to poop on it, and then got mad at him when he wouldn't poop.
So, okay. Do we want to just... You give me these cliff notes on a couple cases, that we kind of riff on them, or do you want to get all the cases out and then we riff on them?
I feel like we should just kind of go through all of them real quick, because they all kind of... If you hear them all in a row, that you might be able to form a better opinion, because that one right there sounds like there's some definite...
Okay. I'm just going to take notes while you talk, so
Okay.
I have that.
So another weird case that they go into is there was a boy that went missing. They had a search party out looking for him, and for a few days they would walk down the same path to this the same starting point, do their search, come back. They did
What
this
was
for
the age of the kid?
2 or 3 again.
Okay.
Very young.
Same age range.
They go back for a few days, and then on the 3rd or 4th day they're walking down the trail, and in the middle of the night a tree had fallen, and they found the kid's body on top of that tree.
The 3-year-old?
Yes, dead.
So, okay, so you saying you talking the kid and his parents, they walked this path every single day?
No. The kid and his parents were out camping.
Okay.
Kid goes missing. Search parties come out. And every day
Okay.
the group of search party people walk the same trail to kind of get to the same starting point.
Okay.
And
on the way to that starting point, this is where they found the tree with the kid's body.
yeah, on the 3rd day.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't a thing of they found him further away. They literally found him right next to where they start for days.
And it was a fallen tree.
Yeah,
right?
it had fallen
Okay.
over in a storm, and he was just on top of the tree. And the National Park Service basically was maybe a cougar attacked him or whatever. So that was a weird one. There's one case of a boy who was found. He was he was hiking with a group of family friends, and he kind of ran ahead a little bit.
Again, same age range.
Yeah, he was, I think, 4 or 5, and ran ahead a little bit, and the group kind of rounded the corner up to catch up to him 10 seconds later, and he's gone. And they searched for him. They found him up higher on the mountain they were hiking on. He was about 5,000 feet or 500 feet higher up in elevation than where they were.
So he rounded the corner, then they rounded the corner,
And he was
10 seconds later gone. But he was...
They found his dead body
Oh, it was his body was dead.
a few days later, 500 feet up in elevation from where he started, which is first right off the bat weird, because why would this kid walk up elevation by himself? It's just kids naturally are not going to just start heading uphill in a difficult terrain.
Now, all of these did they take place in Yosemite?
I think all of these ones did, yeah.
These ones I used so far. Okay.
Yeah. This one was weird because the National Park Service came out and said straight up this was a cougar attack, even though the boy's body had no signs of mutilation. His clothes weren't ripped. Like, he was almost in pristine condition. But they said he got attacked by a big cat.
Okay.
There was one case of a kid that went missing. He was missing for 5 years, and randomly one day they found one of his teeth placed on a log.
Same age range, so 3 to 5 years old. Yeah. Missing for 5
They've
days.
never found his body. No, 3 or 5, 4 years.
Yeah.
They've never found his body, but then randomly they found, and it's very clearly just placed on a log.
Did they? Okay, we'll come back to that one. I got a note for that one.
Let's see. There was, and then it starts to break down into not necessarily specific cases, but cases of like they'll find someone's body years after they go missing or days after they go missing, and like their clothes have been taken off and they're like neatly folded next to the person's body. Their shoes, like they had one kid who went missing for a few years. They found him. His shoes had been taken off and tied after being taken off, and the shoes looked brand new. Like
he was dead?
Yeah.
Him? So he was missing for 5 years.
And then they
found with like brand new shoes tied together, like it's someone's.
Well, they were his shoes from when he went missing, but they looked like if you had a body or if you had gone missing for 4 years and your shoes and your clothes were out in the woods for 4 years in like weather, you'd think there'd be some damage or some like fading or something.
Yeah,
but
after
these
5 years of wearing the same pair of shoes.
These looked like they were just brand new out of the box. So it's just a bunch of, and all of these national.
Do you know? So a lot of the ones that you just laid out having to do with like kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any accounts? You said like, so that's one end of the range. Do you have any with like, were these all kids all special needs that you know of, or was it not indicated?
No, none of these were.
These were all just your average little kids. Do you have any accounts for special needs kids off
they,
the top of your head?
Those are when it gets into those and like adults, the specific details become a little less important.
Okay.
And it becomes more of like a thing of like this doctor who goes camping every weekend randomly disappeared, and instead of looking for him, they just went meh. Gone.
They, as in the National Park Service?
National Park Service or the FBI.
What about other people, family members that...
Oh, yeah, they keep up the search, but they're always railroaded, too.
Okay.
There's lots of cases of parents of missing kids, mothers, wives, sisters of people that go missing being like, hey, have you heard anything? And a lot of the times the National Park Service comes back with, what are you talking about? Like, it's almost like they search for these people for a few days to keep up the appearance that, oh, yeah, no, totally, we're going to find them. And then after a few days, they're like, that's good enough. And they stop, and it just vanishes. They don't want anything to do with it. And so people come to them, and they're like, what happened to this guy? What happened to my kid? And they just go. And it's not even, like, in some instances, it is like a shrug. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, it's not even enough of a shrug. It's a who are you? What? Missing person. That's not a thing. So, yeah, it gets very weird. And then, you bring in the government because, like I said, they've had military presence in some of these cases where it's weird enough that they don't usually send, like, military troops to search for civilians, let alone armed military, personnel into these woods to search for somebody. And then they don't find them. And then they go, well, we were never here. Kind of weird stuff.
Except for the one that you were talking about where they were like, clearly, yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, that guy, and like he came into.
Why would it send out like armed guard or armed military?
And that guy wasn't like in charge when it happened. He came in later.
Yeah.
And was sort of just like.
But he wasn't denying that they were there.
He was even like looking back, like that's really weird that this would happen.
Yeah, you were just saying, most instances, they're like, oh yeah, we didn't have a presence there.
Yeah, and then the FBI is the same way where they're like. They'll either be like, we don't know what you're talking about, or do the old law enforcement thing of, it's an ongoing investigation, so we can't talk about it kind of thing. And it's just very weird for something that they're playing off. I mean, in most cases, it's just natural. It just happens. People wander off. People die.
Yeah. Cats
attack people all the time. And then you go, well, details, and they go, shady, deny. So,
okay. So we kind of have a good overview, a couple profiled cases here with some details. I know as we've talked about this over the course of this not on the air, but you and I have talked over the course of leading up to this episode. You said there are some cases that have happened in Wisconsin. Do you know of any of those?
No, finding details on those are very difficult. Unless you, like, I could probably find it if I actually, like, reached out to some of these people.
Okay.
Or you tried to use the Freedom of Information Act. Because David, whatever his last name was that I can't remember now, professionalism. He's gotten information on them. And, like, the one thing that you'll notice if you actually look up, like, there's a map that sort of maps out where the majority of these cases take place, and it's always on the national parks towards the west coast near the ocean. Here in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Midwest area by the Great Lakes, and then over on the east coast near water.
Well, because so I just looked up, and I wasn't 100% positive that we have a bunch of state parks in Wisconsin, but we don't have any national parks to my understanding here in the state.
Well, isn't a state park like part of the national park
Service?
Service?
It's covered by the National Park Service,
right?
But we don't have like a
I assume
like a Yellowstone National Park or Yosemite National Park or Glacier National Park. We just have state parks like Devil's Lake is a state park. Lake Wissota State Park up in Chippewa. So the only thing that really comes into play, because we've talked about this forest in other probings, but the Chequamegon, it's not a park. It's a huge forest that covers a lot of northern Wisconsin. We had a cabin up in that area, and I never realized until I kind of became an adult how big that fucking forest is. I think it's considered a national forest or a state. I don't
think the qualifying it as like this is a national park, this is that's not in any way like important. It's a big wooded natural area, but the connection is that it's by a body of water and it's covered by the National Park Service.
It's governed by the National Park
Those
Service.
are the people you get in contact with if you have any questions. So that's kind of the thing, and like I said, it's a little hard to find like specific cases.
So the Chequamegon is actually covered. It's considered a national forest. Yeah. So I'm just looking right now to see if it's covered by the national or the parks national park.
But the main thing is just the Great Lakes are kind of an area of focus because again, he's got like a list of criteria as far as like what makes one of these cases stand out as opposed to like an actual just random disappearance or somebody that decided to, check out kind of thing. And one of them happens near a body of water, and that's northern Wisconsin, Great Lakes, right up there. So.
Okay. Sorry, I sidetracked myself. Just because I know, like, I've been there and it kind of resembles woods that you would think. Mm-hmm. But the Chequamegon is not covered by the National Park Service. Oh. It is covered by the U.S. States Forest Service, the USFS.
Okay.
So, but let's be real. That's probably the sister governing body to the National Park Service.
Head at the end of the day, you get to the same point of that pyramid.
Right. But continue.
And like I said, it's not necessarily like that's not a qualifier. It's more of just, is it an outside area near a body of water where somebody went missing and they said it was exposure, but there was no signs of frostbite? Or
it's just the fact that the majority of these reports have happened in or very, very near the proximity of a national park.
Well, they all happen in a park area or a camping area in a park area, but I
feel like we're just arguing semantics.
We really are. The point that I was trying to get to is that it's you can see it makes a U around America, and in the middle of America where there is no giant bodies of water, 0 cases. So it's not like the majority here and then like a few here and there. No, there's literally like if you were to color it, picture a white United States,
with some states very, very
like you'd see color all the way around the west coast up into the north. But like Wyoming and all that area where there isn't giant bodies of water up there, nothing. Get over by the Great Lakes, more color. Over on the East Coast, more color. In the middle, nothing.
Does it bleed up into Canada at all too?
Yes, and there's other countries too. Like he's got cases in Australia.
Well,
in the
that's what
UK.
I was. I wrote a note here. I know you kind of listed some other countries when we were talking the other day about this, but it seems like to me that almost every continent or country has what's. I mean, missing people go missing all over the world for one reason or another, right? I mean, it doesn't always fall into the realm of paranormal or unexplained or mysterious. You know, you have abductions, you have all that. I mean, they're all considered mysteries when they happen until they're solved. It seems to me, as I've grown into an adult and just, hearing things, it seems like every country has a location like this. Now, what's different from like this is that it makes the U. It's not one specific region of the U.S. that it's happening. It's across the board in the U.S. or like in a very distinct pattern, so to speak. Where, from my understanding, a lot of other countries have this specific area is where people go missing.
Right, kind of like the suicide forest in Japan.
Right, or like basically every country has its own version of like a Bermuda Triangle, if you will, where with what you're kind of explaining, we have a weird arc. We have a missing information.
Yeah. And I think it's the simple fact that it sort of happens in not just one. If this was like a 500 square mile area, like the Bermuda Triangle, where it was like the weird stuff happens here, I think it'd be a little bit easier to
discredit,
or just not, and be like, oh, you're stretching it. You're drawing to conclusions that you want. But when it's like, it's not just in this area, it's over here, it's over there, it's here, it's there. And, when there's one or two governing bodies over it, which are essentially the same thing, and you go, what's the deal with that? And they go, no. It's like, okay, something's a little. It'd be like if in the Bermuda Triangle you went, so what's up with all these sinking ships and airplanes that go missing, and whoever's governing that area of the ocean goes, there's water there.
Interpol would just be like, what's a triangle?
Yeah, so I mean, it'd be a lot easier to believe something weird's going on there if there was such a shady response to it. Usually in the Bermuda Triangle, you go, what's up? And everyone's like, we don't know.
You're the dumbass that went into the triangle.
It's fucking weird. We should figure it out, but we don't really know.
Okay, so let's get into kind of breaking down. I'll go over some of the notes I wrote as you were reading some of these cases and break down kind of theories, either per story or just, like you said, let's get into some of what we're thinking is going on here. Now we've kind of laid out some information for everyone.
Correct.
Okay, so one of the first notes I wrote was special needs.
Yep.
And you kind of already answered that question in the sense of when it comes to specifics such as special needs or like adults, there's obviously that's missing information, but there's a big lack of details missing too, unlike the several stories you kind of laid out.
Well, and I think it's not so much that the information is missing, it's just less important.
Yeah, because I guess I was curious if there was like one sort of special needs, is it specifically kids with autism? Is it specifically kids with Down syndrome? Is it specifically kids with this or that?
No, they've said that there's kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome.
So it's not one.
Yeah, and like the thing is, it's never like that's brought up as sort of a it's kids with special needs are lumped in with just kids in general. The idea of being high functioning adults down to children and those who, need to be cared for in the same vein as children kind of thing.
Okay.
Where it's both ends. It's not usually guys like you and I, like normal, like not high functioning, but not.
We're definitely not high functioning.
But adults. Not, we're like if you and I went camping and disappeared, it'd be real quick to be like they were idiots.
And also no one would care.
Yeah, I mean,
People be like, oh shit, I guess I gotta find a new podcast.
I have a dog. She might care.
She'll eat the cat first and then.
That's fair.
And then she'll move on.
That's fair.
People will come and care about the dog before they're like, hey, where'd those two dum-dums go?
He's missing. His dog, though. But, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's a thing of, like, either people go, that person shouldn't have disappeared. Or they go, oh, it makes sense that person, like that kid or whatever, might have wandered off. But then when they're not found or they're found or their clothes are found, it's always like, well, what the fuck? Like, that shouldn't be how it is. You shouldn't find a kid's shoes 4 years later and look like they just got pulled out of the box.
Yeah.
So it's weird in that. And so, like, it leads down to theories of the most common and the most, I think, we'll start with, like, the most easily digestible.
Okay, so hold on. Before we do that, there was another... This was the only other question I had other than the notes I made on the stories.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've talked about, you said, like, 2,000 distinct cases, right?
Roughly.
What the note I wrote is, just think about this for a second, all the cases that go unreported. I mean, it was just a notion I had. I was like, so there's these 2,000, odd cases that have happened. What about all the ones where it's someone that no one cared about, or it's someone who had no family, or it's someone like they don't even know that person is missing, or it's, it's kids who are out in the fucking woods doing drugs and something happened and they're like, shit, we better not let them know we're out here fucking cooking meth or whatever. And they're just like, I was just curious, like how much greater does that number get when you think about when you think about or try to wrap your head around like how many cases are unreported.
Well, and I mean, that would go to the idea of like when the government reports like crime rates or homicide rates or missing persons in general. It's, you could always be like, well, that number could be twice as much because there's a whole bunch of shit that doesn't get reported. People cover stuff up. People don't report, oops, I accidentally killed my friend or my kid or something. And like, I'm just not going to tell anybody. Like, fuck it. And it's easier to just pretend like it never happened. Yeah. And the whole point of this too is like I said, that he's got a specific checklist of criteria.
Okay.
That if someone goes, hey, weird situation here, he'll look at it and like, is there signs that it could have been an animal attack? Mm-hmm. But when you find somebody with no physical scratch marks, clothes aren't ripped, it's really weird that they would say they got attacked by an animal.
Yeah.
Same with like, the kid wandered off or the person wandered off, they found their body, died of exposure. Mm-hmm. No signs of frostbite. Maybe they weren't gone for very long. Mm-hmm. Or in like the case with the kid that's body just showed up in an area, like they go, oh, they probably overlooked it. You mean the search party where it's
they walked past it
every day
for 3 days, and then all of a sudden one day there was a tree that tipped over
and
with a body on it.
Yeah. So it's weird that way. And then again, things of like, where was the body found? Because in a lot of these cases, like when it is kids or someone that has like even like a physical disability, they're always found in a place where it's difficult for anybody to get to.
Much less a kid.
Who, like, why would a kid wander through 4 miles of thorn bushes and
or
up
like
a hill 500 miles?
Yeah, 500 yards, higher than where the original group was. What kind of rock face was that? Is the kid a professional rock climber? Like, what is he doing?
Yeah, and like there's been cases where he's like, oh, we went there and we went to from where the kid disappeared to where his body was found, and like we had to go up on our hands and knees. We probably should have used ropes. It was very dangerous. Right. How did this 3-year-old do it?
I mean, to that extent, kids are. I mean, you have kids. You know how climby they are on things. Not saying that like kids aren't prone to accidents, but kids are really good at fucking climbing shit. And now again, I'm not saying like that's what happened. I'm just saying like, yeah.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being good at climbing on a couch and going up like a vertical cliff face.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And it's also a thing of like, in a lot of cases, if you think like, imagine you're 3 or 4 years old, you turn around and there's no adults around. You're in the middle of the woods by yourself. Most kids aren't going to take the path of most resistance in any situation.
Yeah, they're going to take
They're going to either start just wandering around and they're going to go downhill. They're going to stay on the path. They're going to go, or they'll just start playing with stuff until they get tired and they sit down.
Yet in none of those cases would the kid just sit there and wait.
No, I mean the kid's gonna.
No kid is gonna just sit there and be like, "Well, eventually someone will show up.
They'll come across me somehow."
Especially, you're just 10 feet away from your group.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit down.
And that's the weird thing, right? Is like they are like 10 feet away from somebody, and there's no sound, there's no indication. It's literally just poof, and they're gone. So yeah, let's.
All right, so let's break down some theories.
And like I said, I want to start with the like most easily to digestible of like what's going on. Let's not jump to crazy. Let's go with Well, a lot of people think that the Park Service covers up these things because they don't want you to think the parks are dangerous. Maybe they are just cases of animal attacks or kids wandering off. But if you
just random negligence.
Yeah, but if you advertised like you come to this park, you could die because thousands of people die every day here. Ain't no one gonna go pay to enter these national parks to go camping, fishing, hunting, hiking, any of that stuff. So it's the money.
I mean,
trail.
you introduce that as the most digestible.
Yeah.
But when I stop and think about it, that would be the most fucked up reason to cover something up in my
Well, yeah,
mind.
but it's the most not digestible as in like I understand. It's the most like believable. Like if someone went, why would you do this? And the answer was for the money. Anybody's gonna go, yeah, that makes sense.
True. But it's still the most fucked up reason to cover something up.
The most fucked up. But
like I'm sure we're gonna swing on a curve here to the crazier ideas, and more of a conspiracy style. But again, because you want to save money and you like your greenbacks.
Anytime that the answer is because the government wants your money, well, that's a fucked reason for anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of the theories behind it is that they're covering it up just so you keep going to the parks. They don't want you to think it's dangerous.
Like, hey, this rock star is not that bad for you. It's got vitamins.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you you're drinking poison.
Yeah.
Because we want your money.
It'd be very detriment to our bank account if we told you you're going to die from this.
Yeah.
Or there's an increased risk of dying.
This Bang's got super creatine in it.
This is not sponsored by Bang, by the way. So, yeah, it's a fucked up reason, but it's also the most, like... It's the least, like, out there.
Yeah.
When anything, the answer is for the money. Of course it is. So then we jump into Bigfoot is another common go-to. And I saw, like I said, there's a map that they've put out of showing, like, kind of...
Overlaid. Yeah, you're telling me about, like, an overlay of Bigfoot sightings across the U.S.
Matches with these cases.
Matches with this 411.
It's basically, it's the same map.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's national parks, it's giant wooded areas. Of course it could, but it's just very strange that it's almost a perfect match.
Yeah, it's I mean, why, in my eyes, why would Bigfoot be interested in taking any one of the number of things that you just listed out? You know, kids with special needs. Obviously if you're a Bigfoot, maybe you don't comprehend that. At the same time, why would you comprehend or take someone who's a doctor or a surgeon that, you know, like what would be the significance for you as a Bigfoot?
I mean, I
to
think
go and do that?
With that, it jumps to maybe that spectrum of people becomes less important. Like we're putting like emphasis on a detail that doesn't matter. It's an animal that's attacking people, and it's getting high functioning people because they're out in the woods more, and it's getting children and, you know, people with mental or physical special needs.
Because they're smaller and weaker, and
it's easier to grab them.
The primitive brain. I get that, I guess.
So I mean, maybe it's just a detail that doesn't matter.
I mean, it could be. Or it's a detail that matters of great significance as well.
Right. Maybe
it could be, you know, what if, going out on a conspiracy limb here that just popped into my brain, something new for my brain, and just processing.
Processing is new for your brain?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
What if Bigfoot,
air quotes,
does exist? But it's not the
Bigfoot
of the lore that we're so akin to believing.
Right.
What if Bigfoot is agents of the government dressed up? I know that sounds silly. I know that sounds fucking silly, but think about it.
Okay.
Agents of the government dressed up. You know, we've for millennia now, generations, we've laid out these stories of these beasts in these hairy creatures that wander and roam the woods.
Right.
So that's laid out there.
Uh-huh.
So what's to say that there aren't government people dressed in costumes that go and take, maybe they're profiling these specific people, these specific kids, and that's where this detail or these details that we were just talking about would come in, and they snatch these people up.
So the government sends people in Bigfoot costumes.
I know it sounds stupid,
to snatch people.
But think about it.
And then deny that
because here's the thing. If you're in the woods and you see, or we see a Bigfoot, is your inkling instantly going to be to run away? Or is it going to be, is your interest going to be held and you're going to be a little mesmerized and want to further investigate because of what's been put into our mind, what's been taught to us by culture and pop culture
Right.
about this scenario, your interest is going to be held. You're going to be a little mesmerized.
Yeah.
So let's say you're looking at a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You're kind of stopped in your tracks, and then
So it's more of a hunting technique.
it's a
Kind of like,
it's a-
what's the thing where you flash a flashlight in a deer's face that's illegal?
oh, deer shining.
Yeah, it's like
not illegal.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, but it's like that, right? Like instead of
Kind of like
because if a dude in a suit came up to you, you might be like, I'm gonna walk away from.
or maybe
this.
it's one dude in a Bigfoot suit. You're stopped. You're frozen. Like, oh my god, it's a Bigfoot. I found him. Boom. 2 other agents bum rush you. Fucking
Clever
tie you
girl.
up. What'd you say?
Clever girl.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like that. One distracts you. 2 other ones swarm you, hog tie you, duct tape your mouth, and haul you off. Never be heard from again.
That's what our tax dollars are going towards.
I'm just saying, like,
Could
it
just
wasn't,
arrest people
wasn't
under
as silly
false
as a
pretense.
fucking idea as you thought it was initially going to be.
I will not confirm or deny that theory, but
You don't have to. Your face did all the confirming.
fuck. But the Bigfoot theory also kind of bleeds into the next thing, which is as one.
Giorgio Tsakis would often say.
Not gonna say it was aliens, but it was aliens. Which is another big thing of like, of course it's aliens. These people are getting abducted. Maybe the government is in on it, and that's why they're being shady about it, because that's a big conspiracy that the government knows aliens are around.
Well, okay. Again, now I know it's going to start off silly sounding, but just follow me with this, all right?
There's a government agent dressed up like an alien.
Damn it, why did you take that from me? 2 others swoop in and get you, because you're going to be mesmerized by an alien, all right? Shit, you took that joke from me, Jake. All right.
Head of the FBI comes in. I need $4.5 million. Why? We need more costumes. Our costume budget is too low right now.
It's too low. We need it to be fancier.
Frank is just wearing a bowl on his head, dressing up like a goddamn alien because we ran out of prosthetics.
Frank's got a colander on his head at this point. He used the last bit of tinfoil to wrap it so it's reflective.
It's like, did you ever see Monsters, Inc.?
Yeah.
When the little girl is dressed like an alien, she's got googly eyes with like vacuum hoses for arms.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. I'm so mad that you took that from me, but I'm also so proud of you for taking it from me.
Why did my taxes go up this year? Production budget? What does that mean?
Next year we're going to the moon.
Fucking Sherry ain't got nothing on us.
Oh. So, I mean, the aliens, as outreaching as it is also, everyone, if you're listening to this podcast, you're at least slightly interested in conspiracy. So the conspiracy idea that the government is aware of aliens and that they're in cahoots and, hey, we need DNA samples. We need buttholes to probe,
Something.
That one, so that specific theory, the robots with the 3-year-old.
See, that's the
one. So like,
and other people that have been found alive, either like I said, they have weird memories like that, or no memory. But a very common thing is they're like, I just saw a bright light, or like they'll describe it as like I looked outside, like the cave I was in or whatever, and it always was daylight, even though they'd been missing for days and nights. That's always when you match it up to now have someone describe their alien abduction. All I saw was a bright.
well, and like if you're 3 years old, you're maybe more than likely not going to understand the concept of aliens. Right. So like, but you understand what a robot is as a 3-year-old most of the time.
If you've seen a cartoon.
Yeah. So like you're like, oh, it was a robot. And then, as we've learned over the course of this season, just investigating stuff, apparently aliens are just obsessed with our buttholes and our feces and our fecal matter. So, I mean, that all tracks with that specific story. 3-year-old kid goes missing. He's found alive, actually. It's the only one in the stories you told me that was found alive.
Yeah, there are a couple other ones, but that's the weirdest one.
I'm just saying the ones that you just went over, just like 20 minutes ago. Out of all, like the 5 stories you told me were touched on, that was the only one where it was a kid that was found able to tell his story.
Yeah, and
so he's like, yeah, it was robots, and there were other robots there, and they wanted me to poop on this piece of paper.
Yeah.
But I couldn't poop, and they got mad at me.
That to me is the weirdest part of that story. Like if the kid's like, I followed this person that looked just like my grandma, but they had weird lights on their head and there was robots, I'd be like, that's weird. And then when he goes, they got mad at me because I couldn't poop. I'm like, well, what the fuck is wrong with these people? You're taking a kid and making him poop.
And with that story too, that very well could have been. This sounds really fucking weird, but there are weirder things that happen. That could have been some sort of sick pervert, dressed up. Kids like shiny things.
See, and
and he could have been like, "Hey, come to this cave."
This is a
with
good
my
segue.
with my other pervert friends who are dressed in shiny things. Now, poop on this piece of paper, kid. And it's a fucking circle jerk of fucking perverts waiting for a kid to poop.
This is a good segue because there is another theory that is more down to earth, and that is that there is either one or a group of serial killers.
There's no way it's one if there's 2,000 some cases.
And that's kind of, and what a lot of people go to is that it's either a generational thing where this has been maintained and happening, or it's a group that's going on, and that the people in charge, the national park people or the government in general, they don't want to acknowledge that there's such a threat.
I could be easily swayed that it's a Hills Have Eyes sort of situation where it's like it's a family.
See, and that's another.
It's a fucking family that's
been brought up too as sort of a feral people.
Yeah.
Which, because a lot of there's a theory that the Bigfoot phenomenon in general, it's not an ape creature. It's just a genetically, or just a offshoot of us that is actually just feral humans, people that went to live off the grid, and they have for generations, and they're just, some of them are big, some of them are weird, some of them are hairy, they live out in the woods.
I get that, and I think we're going to do a Bigfoot specific story. I think let's save that kind of rabbit hole for that. I'm talking more like straight up people, humans who know better, who have conscience, who aren't feral, that like
just live out in the woods.
Like a straight up Hills Have Eyes sort of situation. It's a family that's lived out there. At this point, they're fucking inbred as shit.
Yep.
And you got Ma and Pa teaching their youngsters how to fucking trap humans, track humans, kill humans, fucking fuck them up.
Well, and they might not even just be killing them. Maybe they're taking some of these kids and being like, "You're a brother now."
Right. I mean, especially the kids with special needs. Like they might kick and scream and wail for a while, but after a while, that kid's gonna adapt and get used to that lifestyle and not know any better. That it's fucked up what's happening to them.
Yeah, maybe they're attacking kids because they're easy, or they want them in their family, and then they're attacking the grown-ups because, well, you're on my territory, you're on my property.
I mean, it could very well be like a territorial
it's
thing.
one of those things of like, well, why isn't everyone that goes out? And it's like, well, think of it of like, you wake up in your apartment and there's a guy outside. You're a little like suspicious of it, but you're not going to attack him. Now imagine you wake up, dude's in your living room.
Yeah.
You can get a little pissed off.
Well, and staying in the vein of this theory, but circling back to the idea that specific adults with specific skill sets were taken.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's say it is a sort of Hills Have Eyes thing. Someone's injured.
Yeah.
They know for whatever reason this guy went out camping. They somehow deduced that he is some sort of doctor or MD of sorts.
Right.
And snatched him up and said, "Hey, you doctor, fix now."
Maybe they just know, like, well, usually when adults come out here, we take them, but we take their stuff because they have medical supplies.
Well, right. First aid kits and stuff of that sort.
Maybe every once in a while they get lucky and they get someone who is a doctor who helps them, and they go, well, we'll keep taking the big ones.
It's kind of a shotgun theory. Like at some point, we're gonna take someone that's got something advantageous to us.
We take a big guy and he's got a weapon. He's got first aid. Oh, we took this one guy and he helped fix this, this injury. So.
And then they just discard them when they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that to me is the scariest outcome, because if it's Bigfoot, okay, well, Bigfoot's scary in theory, but it's also a thing of like, well, let's discover it, let's figure it out. Aliens, well, of course there's fucking aliens. If you don't think there's aliens,
stop listening to our podcast.
You're just an idiot. The government, I think the government is involved either way. I think they know,
whether they're just clearly denying it or they're
covering it up. They're denying it for what purpose?
Right. Whether they know what's going on and they're covering it up, or whether they don't know what's going on and they're covering it up.
Right.
They're clearly hiding it. For one reason
maybe they don't know exactly what's going on, but they're like, well, we don't want it to get out that something is going on.
Right.
Or they straight up are like, yeah, that's Joe Bob. He comes up, we give him his mail, but we don't want you to know about Joe Bob. So, not that there's anything wrong with people named Joe Bob.
Yeah. The only thing that that doesn't jive with me with the whole hills have eyes theory is in these couple cases that you laid out, where it was a cougar attack, but there was no signs of
Nope.
any
Yep.
animal attack. So you even still thinking like if it's a feral human, hills have eyes sort of situation, wouldn't there be some sort of sign or scratch marks or claw marks or bite marks or something
You'd think.
that would indicate, hey, there was some sort of struggle that went on? And because of that, then that for me kind of lays credence to the more paranormal level of
Right.
aliens, or even something that we've never even touched on, which is, all these national parks, all of the U.S., the Native American culture that we've talked about in several probings before.
Are we gonna start ragging on Native American culture? We
No,
seem to
I'm not-
always draw
I'm
back
not.
to.
No, but the thing is, you always think I'm ragging on it, and I'm not, because it's just the culture is so highly spiritual, and the whole continent that we live on was inhabited by millions of Native Americans before were here.
Right.
So I mean, with it being such a highly spiritual culture, and a lot of these cases taking place out in lands that are national parks and national forests and that sort of stuff, what's to say we haven't talked about like the spiritual realm of things? I mean,
Right.
we cover all sorts of ghost stuff and hauntings and stuff like that, and we didn't even touch on the idea that shit, maybe these could be straight up paranormal things, like spiritual beings
It's true.
of shapeshifters and
Well, and to touch back to the you've heard of the Sea of Trees, right? Near Mount Everest, the suicide forest in Japan.
yeah, I
Where
have.
that's like you're not supposed to go there because people.
That's where that YouTuber got all. Well, no, I know, but
he was a fuckhead.
Well,
Replace that.
either way, but yeah, I don't know why I can't think of his name. 'Cause
We
I
don't need to
care.
even say. I know his name, but we don't need to say it.
But that's the area you're talking about, right? 'Cause
Yes,
yeah.
and the sort of if you ask people in Japan like what it is, because their culture is much more spiritual
Right,
based
it
than
is.
ours.
It is.
It's because that place is cursed. That place is a place of something evil, and it draws people in to kill themselves there, and that's like what it is. And you might be onto something in the idea of like we have all of these strange things that happen. We don't touch. I mean, you and I have discussed it obviously, and like I just joke when I say you're ragging on it. It's just
Right.
funny that it always pops up, but maybe it does for a reason. In that, if you think of like sort of a cliche horror trope, the Indian burial ground.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what this country is.
Yeah,
is a
I mean,
massive Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is some credence in the idea
I
of
mean,
like
it's-
maybe it is some sort of wood.
Wander into the wrong part of the forest that's cursed, or I mentioned it on the upcoming Whitewater episode. I always bring it up because I know I don't have malice in my heart,
Yeah.
and I feel like a very spiritual connected being can
Right.
see that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying kids have malice in their heart, just wrong place, wrong time. But maybe some of the adult cases are actually it's without us knowing or realizing. Maybe that adult out there camping is planning some sort of like they're out there camping, getting their bearings because they're gonna go do a mass shooting, and then escape to their secret wooded hideaway. And it's a stretch. I get that. I get what I'm saying, but maybe it's a case of like,
Well, and it might not even be a case of bad people, kind of thing. Like maybe it is just like if you read any spiritual, whether it's Native American, Christianity, Judaism, whatever, there's bad forces out there. A lot
Right.
of, and I mean there is a lot of like the Bigfoot myth stems from Native American myths of the wild man, or like and it's a natural force. Bigfoot is a natural spirit that's out there.
Yeah, he's not like a physical being of sorts.
Right. So, and I mean, it could just come down to a thing of like maybe some of the stories they tell of like the Wendigo is a very spiritual tale, Native American legend.
But see,
And it's all a thing of like, well, maybe it's not so much that these people are bad. It's just maybe there's some bad forces out there that are.
and see, that's what I get where you're coming from. Where there's bad energy out there. There's bad juju. There's bad stuff. I'm talking about more of like, it's a good force that recognizes that this human
Yeah.
is a bad person.
That could be.
And
It's an interesting take, especially because it's
like, and I'm if anyone that is listening to this podcast and has a loved one that went and is involved in any of these missing information cases, I'm not saying that your individual went out and is a terrible person and got snatched up.
That's kind of a thing that people probably don't want to talk about because it's hard to judge. Like
it is. I guess I'm really kind of spitballing just in general terms of some of these things might,
it's just a theory.
it's where we
just
kind
an
of
idea.
it's where my mind kind of tracked into talking about this sort of like, there's good forces, there's bad forces, there's good people, there's bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if a good force meets a bad person or a bad force meets a good person, that sort of thing happens. I'm not saying any one of these cases is that. I'm just saying there's definitely stuff out there like that that's happened, or at least been depicted to us in pop culture. Like, hey, that was a bad guy, and this thing that you thought was a haunting the whole time really was protecting you.
Yeah.
That has to at some point happen in real life.
It's a different approach. I think the whole idea of it being like a natural spiritual force is something that isn't really discussed a lot. I mean, I think it comes down to the idea that a lot of things in the paranormal world, Bigfoot, ghosts, all of aliens, all of that stuff, at the end of the day, like there is, that overarching theory that it's all one and the same. It's all connected.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that sort of seems like people get like pigeonholed and specialize with air quotes.
Specific
and
paranormal
if you
genres.
go, I'm a ghost hunter, and someone goes, well, what if Bigfoot's a ghost?
I'm not touching it. It's not Bigfoot, or it's not a ghost.
They either go like, I believe in Bigfoot, but it's not a ghost, or they go, Bigfoot, I don't believe in Bigfoot. I believe in ghosts, not Bigfoot. And vice versa.
And, backtracking off of this specific topic at the moment, that was something, too, that going into this whole project, when we first started talking, I don't know that I clearly vocalized it in the way that you just did, but I was very nervous about starting something like this because I didn't want to get pigeonholed into, oh yeah, that's just the paranormal. They say they're paranormal, but they just do a lot of ghost hunting.
Yeah.
I was very afraid to be pigeonholed into one of those things because I do have a fascination, and you do too, with all of it.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I thought it'd be cool to talk about this particular topic, because this is probably the most different thing that we've talked about
so far, yeah,
in this series. So it's one of those things of like, it'll be cool let's talk about something different. This is missing people, conspiracy.
It doesn't require us to leave the house. We're recording this in our underwear. It's perfect.
Yeah, yours is a lot smaller than mine, underwear wise, but I'm just saying, like, it's a different thing, and it's kind of something that's like, you're right. Like, I don't want to be known as the ghost hunting podcast,
right,
because there's a lot of ghost stuff that we're going to and have talked about, but the whole point of this is there's a lot of weird shit in Wisconsin,
right,
not just ghosts,
right?
So,
and that's something we've really taken time to research a lot of stuff in this state. I say it as the sign-off line, but the state really is a lot creepier than I even knew growing up here, and you having lived here for the last almost 10 years.
Yeah,
it is so beyond what I thought,
right?
As far as like, it's Wisconsin. We like to drink. We like beer. We like cheese. Great. No.
We also like ghosts and Bigfoot and aliens.
And you mentioned this last night. Literally, you talk about like paranormal, murders, that sort of stuff, all the kind of the unexplained. And literally, the two things people always bring up are Dahmer and Gein.
Yep.
And that's it. People kind of overlook, or not even overlook, but they kind of don't realize that Wisconsin has 3 cities all vying for position as the top UFO capital of the world, the world.
When you talk about like UFO sightings and alien sightings, and we're past an hour, so we're going to wrap this up real quick, but I just want to get this out. We said it before, but when you think aliens and stuff, you can go Roswell, Area 51.
You think the Western Desert,
even
states.
Arizona with the triangle lights and stuff like that. But then when you go, most sightings per capita technically are one of these cities in Wisconsin,
right?
And then you start to wonder, like, well, why Wisconsin? So right. I mean, that's kind of the idea of what we're doing. But I think the missing 411 is something that it's catching traction, and we should all sort of be aware of
And
it,
I
and especially if you're into this sort of even either true crime, paranormal, conspiracy stuff. Like, yeah, there's something weird going on here, and we should kind of put our ears to the ground and see what's going on. So,
and when we started this, I had no idea where this probing. When we started this probing at the beginning of the recording an hour ago,
right?
I didn't know where we were going to go with this, and actually, I've been kind of sucked in more so than I thought I was going to.
See, and that's
this.
it is this
And
is literally a rabbit hole.
I would really actually, and I think if depending on how the followers and the listeners feel, I wouldn't mind touching and circling back to this at least once a season, and just not calling it a catch-all, but kind of looking at updates to this. As we put out every season, come back, circle back. We can sit down. It can be a theorizing episode. It can be a theorizing, like, hey, here's some updates on some missing information cases.
Yeah.
And then, just kind of...
Well, it'll be nice, too, once this comes out and once, we get a good conversation started with people of, like, if they've heard of anything.
Right.
If anybody listening to this,
yeah,
maybe you do know of a specific Wisconsin case or another specific case.
Or a loved one of yours. And,
Yeah.
we'd love to sit down and talk to you about it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day with these cases, there is a lot of people already going like, yeah, it's nothing. It's like, well, no, like, let's sit down and have that conversation first before we just blow it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this episode went, it'll be roughly about an hour, but it's going a little bit. So I think
I don't think
we've covered what we
mad
need to.
if they're still listening. I don't think they're going to be mad that...
Maybe they're just saying, wrap it up, you fucks. This isn't Lord of the Rings. God. So yeah, but I think this was a fun topic to discuss.
It was definitely way more interesting than I...
This was something that I sort of stumbled upon in the last couple of months, and I'm like, we should talk about this. So,
and I was having these thoughts earlier. This is nothing topic related. It's more podcast related. So I always try when we go into a recording to like think of people to thank, followers specific and all that sort of stuff. And I always fall short and always tend to forget by the end of the episode or the end of the probing. I'm still teaching myself. By the end of the probing, I'm always forgetting, like, oh yeah, I wanted to thank this person. We have specific people that have been helping us through this whole thing. And to each one of you, like, thank you 1,000 times over. You guys, you know who you are when I get down to specifics and what you did for us. With that in general, you all listening, the contribution, just the fact that you're listening, sharing this, liking this, encouraging us. I mean, that all encourages us to keep doing this. That feedback is awesome. And in my mind, any one person I've been face to face with and talked to about this project and had even a glimmer of interest in what you and I are doing, to me, you're a contributor. You already, that glimmer in your eyes or that little smirk or even an eye roll, in some instances, I just want to say thank you. If we know you personally and you have helped us, like I said, that I've thanked you or Jake has thanked you 1,000 times over. I just wanted to get that out there before I forgot because, like I said, I always fall short in thanking people when it comes to the end of the probing.
Yeah, and I think at the end of this season, we are going to have sort of a special bonus episode. I think will be good for like a wrap up sort of deal. And I think we can get into like specifics then. Because then we'll have time to prep. But I feel everything Nick's saying and agree with him. There's a lot of, this is fun to just talk. But at the end of the day, it's like we could just sit down and talk. We don't have to record it. We don't have to go through that whole process. We don't have to go to these places and check this stuff out. We could just chat about it. And we do it because I hope somebody wants to listen to it. I hope it's an interesting topic for me, and I hope getting the word out makes it interesting for someone else. So... But I think that's it for Missing 411.
Sounds good.
Check out the documentary. Check out the books. Not that we're sponsoring anything, but it's an interesting topic, and that's the best source of information, I think, is straight from the mouth thing.
The mouth of the author's hand.
Yeah. Fuck. Check us out. Hit up the social media, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to email us, Instagram.
Snapchat.
We do a Snapchat story for every probing that we go out in the field to do, so check that out. If you want to email us, it's americascaryland@gmail.com. If you don't know how to spell it, learn. Do we do the Grindr Tinder joke still? We're still doing that, yeah?
Yeah, we did it last night.
So we got Grindr, Tinder, Christian Mingle.
Farmers, whatever. Is it Farmers Almanac?
Looking for farmers.
Looking for farmers. Yeah.
JoeBobInTheWoods.com.
Yep.
He's a weird dude, but he's got some cool pics.
MyCaveOrYourCave.org.
That one's
it's
a
weird like one.
You gotta like caves.
Yeah.
So,
yep. All right, Jake. See you on the next probing.
Yep. Bye, Nick.
All right, and don't forget, guys, this state is much, much creepier than we think it is.